the organizers, the ERF, the ID, if I make a mistake, I'm trying always to use abbreviations, the ERF, the IDRC, MEI, and LCPS. Radia Sedaoui from Algeria, and ESCWA, the Regional Commission of Western Asia. For those who don't know ESCWA is the Regional Commission of Western Asia. It's one of the 5 regional commissions within the UN system. As a think tank organization, we consider that we provide policy advice, capacity building, and we voice the voice of the Arab region. When you speak about the Arab region, whatever during my speech, the MENA region, I consider all the Arab countries included. Maybe just to give a context, anyway, I was tasked to basically give context and help to give a little bit of positive energy. Always you speak about challenges, but let's move to solutions, and good that the report already gave a very good insight, specifically that addresses one of the major issues more on the social aspect that lead to the economic development. To give a context to that, basically, I will be dive into more when we speak about the energy transition and how we see it. I think in the opening speech, we spoke about the access to reliable, affordable, and stable energy. I would say always coming from the energy sector and within the US system, and how we advocate for 2030 agenda for sustainable development. Energy is the enabler. And when you speak about the energy transition, mostly a transition is just a bridge, the bridge, whether it's sustainable or not sustainable. So it's more about transformation of the energy system. As we know, it comes from centuries where we had different energy system. Now we move to another energy system, and it comes with its specific challenges. What is important now that energy is enabler, not just to have clean energy and address the climate crisis, but more importantly, it's about how to really drive all the social and economic indicators, all the sectors. It's how to leave no one behind. It was to ensure the equality, how to reduce inequality, not only from a gender perspective, from a generation perspective, but more importantly, when it comes to rural-urban divide, countries in conflict, and you name them. The other aspect also that it's not just about the people, it's also about the planet, and specifically that the energy system, while we need to do real transformation, it's not just to create jobs, and the economic development is to ensure even in the way that we ensure that we respect the planet as we move forward. So that's why what we mean, and I try to put it in energy transition value proposition. Uh, it's about inclusive and just energy transition to modern energy. What that mean? It's really a model shift to the way we produce and consume energy. It's not just I know that we spoke about renewable energy. Does it mean that we move from fossil fuel to another source of energy independently of this and other aspects? How to really ensure that we leave no one behind, and to ensure that healthy population as we move forward, but also an economy that creates decent jobs for the current generation, but also the future generation. And specifically, that's why I presented the STEM development goals, and specifically also why we have these challenges, because we have a lot of trade-offs between sectors. We can, for example, say that we want to have an access to water and sanitation, but this comes at a low cost affordable to everybody. Then you need to have subsidies, and then this reflects on energy. So everything is interlinked in a way that's how to improve and address and strengthen synergies while addressing these trade-offs, and to ensure also that inequality is also addressed. I think an example of the participatory approach is really this institutions, and really good that we will forward also to solutions together. The participatory approach is really what was and still lacking in most of the cases, specifically when you speak about vulnerables in any community. Always when you speak about access to energy, the most vulnerable, it's not just about those who live in rural areas and about the gender issues, but also those with disability and those who really are far to voice their concerns. And more importantly, policies are good, regulations are good, but enforcement of this is extremely important, and the responsibility of all of us as stakeholders. And really we need to commit and collaborate together. This is the key, and this is the value proposition when it comes to the just inclusive energy transition. Since we speak about renewable energy, specifically that with the MENA region, we cannot be taken in isolation scenarios that we have, they all of them reach the same level. That 50% of the renewable energy, let's say the energy that's come in the future, I'm coming for renewable energy technologies, and the specific see it in this graph, we speak about renewable energy, but also it comes with a quarter of energy efficiency and all kind also of carbon removal. We should acknowledge that whether we are moving towards 2030, 2050, and 2060, independently of the horizon that are put when we speak about the net zero emissions, but specifically also we need to acknowledge that fossil fuels, and you see it in the place where we are here, will remain for a certain period of time, and that's why carbon removals technologies are needed and need to be upscaled. And this is acknowledged also in the climate agenda. More importantly, also that 90% of the solutions, if we want to drive that, are coming from renewable energy, but more when it comes also that some of the technologies, and this is where the challenge when you speak about small scale and the role of medium small enterprises, that much of the 50% of the technologies, we know them, but still a lot of work in order to really work on the innovation and to make this technology cost effective, but also applicable. Now coming to the region and where we stand, where we need to make the off efforts. Always in the region, 10% of the population still lack of electricity. And this based on the recorded data at the SDG 7 related to energy. Specifically in the region, we should acknowledge that the bright spot of the region is the energy access. But it was done with the cost, and we'll come to that. And when we need to focus when we speak about the last miles and where we have room to work is number one is 10% left in terms of access when it comes to the urban-rural divide between 98 to 82% in rural area. It's number two, also it's about the areas of conflict and those who basically come out of conflict, and we see it in the countries where we live. And we should not also take renewable energy, specifically small scale and decentralized solutions, without looking clean cooking, which has a huge impact on women and kids. And I just was in Mauritania early last month, and really we can see how they really understand what we mean by clean cooking, because they have really using traditional fuels when it comes to cooking, even at homes. And specifically where we need to do the focus is the aspect of renewable energy. I just tried to put in this graph to see that in the region, although the major capacities are coming specifically from the region, above the 120% of the investments coming from the MENA region in the coming decades. But at the same time, you have that's currently the situation where just a 5% of the final energy consumption. Most of it is traditional fossil fuels, traditional fuels, biomass effectively, and it's where you see it in the LDCs like Sudan and Mauritania and others. But at the same time, it's also in a country like Egypt, and where we need to do more focus if we want to promote more clean and modern renewable energy. And because I spoke that we need to have a shift in the way we produce and consume. It's not just about having an alternative source of energy. Then really we need to work on the energy efficiency and energy intensity in the key sectors, specifically on the residential and the industry and the commercial sectors. And that's why I think the opening remark, there was the discussion, let's say presentation on what we call economic vulnerability. From our perspective, we had the publication, what we call energy vulnerability. What that means? The energy vulnerability is beyond the current generation. We speak how energy could be an enabler, not just what we have, but how to enable all the social and economic indicators and how sectors, and how basically to ensure that those who don't have voice today, be it women, be it youth who are just born today, and by 2050 will be in the workplace, and we are taking decision at that place. this, technically speaking, they are not contributing to the policy design. And this is what makes the energy vulnerability. It's really the multifaceted of vulnerability that we have in the region, since energy is enabler. I will start with some because they will be addressed in the speech and during the discussion that you have. Specifically, always when we speak about the region, we speak about access to finance, and also the capital development and lack of economic diversification, the economic stagnation, the unemployment, the inequality, the high pollution, environmental degradation, desertification, but also the suboptimal engagement and also management of our natural resources, be it natural resources of oil and gas, but also those we have in terms of solar and wind, and the high dependence on fossil fuels. And why we speak about the high dependence on fossil fuels? I'm come from the oil and gas sector, and they can perfectly understand that you have resources that will remain for decades and for not centuries to come, provided that basically we need to work on the technology and the technology that can help to unlock certain resources that need to be used in order to support the economic development. We are in a region where almost a third of the oil production is coming from the region, 15% of natural gas, but also more than 40% is coming from oil reserves. And this will remain for the coming decades. What is important that the region, be it oil and gas producers or consumers alike, they were all impacted by the fluctuation of the energy market. And this, as per the graph I just mentioned in here, the price volatility, where we can see at a different places, 2008, 2014, and also during COVID, where the situations helped actually to have more innovation in terms of looking to other sources, and more importantly, to think about more economic diversification away from fossil fuels. But there is another aspect I think need to be highlighted from the climate change perspective. A region where we have water scarcity among more than 30 countries globally who are at the level of water scarcity are from the Arab region. And specifically when it comes to the air pollution where we live, and certain places, including in Egypt, for example, where this highlighted in the left-hand side of the graph, you see that it comes to the pollution, and this adding to that the death storm, which is extremely high in the region, this make it above the global average. The other aspect also is transportation, the heavy fuel use in transportation sector and others. This give room to think about alternative sources, but provided that these alternative sources also are taken into consideration in a way to address this. In terms of carbon dioxide emission, renewable energy is certainly the solution, but it's not the only one. Since in the countries where we live, specifically, there's a lot of effort that was done in the MENA region. We take it to countries in the Mashriq, from Egypt, Jordan, but also Morocco and Tunisia and others, where we see that help it in a way that the carbon dioxide emissions reduce. It's below the global average. But what we can see in the others, specifically in the GCC, despite the effort they have taken, but it's very energy intensive, depending on fossil fuels were the high emissions in there. And the other aspect also, I mean, moving from the aspect of the economy, now we go to where it touches the budget and where basically the money is spent. While I spoke about inequality, it's extremely important when we speak about addressing inequality is to look at really the energy subsidies, not only energy subsidy, but also what impact the other sectors. Quite an example, if we take 25 countries globally, as represented in the graph, 8 countries are coming from the region, starting from Saudi Arabia. And it's mostly in the electricity, petroleum product for transportation, but also subsidizing even the industry and even medium small enterprises as they move forward in their energy and economic diversification. So we need to also try to find a balance, since certain studies indicated if we just take 1% of the GDP in terms of removing from the subsidies, then we are creating double 2% from boosting the economy and creating 500,000 jobs just in 6 years if we uplift that. But What is important also is to look at the best business models and how through boosting the economy, through alternative source of energy, we can really work out all of that and try to find other mechanisms. The other aspect that we move to the blind spot of the region, certainly that's why we worked at ESCWA. We do a lot of mapping in terms of potential, but also look into not only the potential, but how policymaker can select also the right place to implement a project. And we see that in the region, we have a huge potential in terms of solar energy specifically, and others in terms of wind specifically. Also, most of the countries in the MENA region, the space is there, the human capital is there, but how to work on that? We tried to, in the ESCWA also, to think about how the integrated approach through medium and small enterprises can boost really the economy and can ensure that we have a business model which is integrated that can really help to upscale invest in small medium enterprises. And I think I had the opportunity to speak about that when I was interviewed during the process of developing the study. We try to really boost small scale renewable energy technologies in an integrated approach. It's not about the energy, it's an energy just the enabler. How to really look at the small medium enterprises where you have youth, you have women, cooperatives, rural areas, and areas where you don't have donors, and try to bring that through grants to ensure that you involve the vocational training, you enable the population, and ensure that you are not just providing energy, you are looking to all the value chain. And this is where I think the medium small enterprises need to think not just about renewable energy would drive jobs just in the specific in the area and the years of construction, is to think really beyond that in the economic sectors. More importantly, that the huge potential is not just about the natural resource that we have, it's really the human capital. And just today, my team launched the human capital publication, Investing in the Future for Enabling the Just Energy Transition. This was a report close to my heart. It took us a year to develop it through focus group surveys, but also desk review and looking to the best practices in the region. And what we come up that specifically in the region and try to bring two important elements. Number one is the population by gender and age group. Where do we stand? We have a human capital where if we really try to work on capitalizing on all of that, we have done everything, because this is it's not a challenge when we speak about growing population. One of the most growing population globally, above 2% annual growth rate, but it's more than that. Actually, I was looking to the figures, and we have since 2010, as you can see in the graphs, we have more in above the age from 0 to 24, and then when you include the 30 per 30, above the 30, then we are 58% of the population from the age of 0 to 30. Men and women alike. And more importantly, than when it comes to the age group of 15-29, where it's really there you have the room to ensure that they are well educated in terms of the energy transition, embed all this principle, get the entrepreneurship spirit and all of that, help to get startup and include them in the economy. You have 29%, 25% of the population. It's a huge potential. And this is in all the countries in the Arabic. It's not in the GCC or the Mashik or North Africa. It's in all our countries. I'm glad that each time I come to Egypt, Cairo, I have a lot of friends who are youth, actually, and they have a lot of startups, and mashallah. The other aspect also from a gender perspective. When we look at the potential, and I was speaking to the Saudi, how they reached the level of 35% in just 2 years, it was just in the KPI they put in all the ministries. You need to do Saudization, you need to really drive the economy. What you did, they put it in the KPIs, you need to respond on that. Where you have the human capital? We have them in the women, highly educated, they invest in all of that, they don't have jobs. So just bring them to the market, and we saw the result. In the region, we have 20% only from women in the labor force, when we have more than that. And when it's come to the unemployment, it's double unemployment rates for women than men, 18% compared to 8%. I think these are figures important to really reflect about, because it is there where, at the policy level, if I want to make policies, if I want to drive basically the entrepreneurship and drive the economy in a sustainable way, where energy is enabler, then I need to look at these figures. Now with the sectors, our study also reflected with the Islamic Development Bank and the ILO study that look at the Horizon 2050, how to reach the net zero, and see different scenarios. all scenarios look at that. You need to look at a niche market. Where you have the niche market is basically in the hydrogen supply, in the construction, electrical engineering and electricity, they would have jobs definitively in all sectors. But more importantly, it's forestry and others. We see that other sectors are gaining importance if we want to really to drive the energy transition climate agenda. And specifically where we can find jobs, where we can create jobs, and where we basically try to think about the use of renewable energy. We look at we've identified that we have a serious skills gap. It's not just the current human capital that we have, but also the future generation that are in the school today, that which reach the universities. And our study conducted that specifically the high demand, it will remain in the electrical engineering, it will remain in all the aspects, also in the oil and gas sector, but specifically also that we have more demand in project management, problem solving, critical thinking, planning, and communication, and so these soft skills that usually I come from an industrial engineer background, and to be honest, I was not communicating well until after maybe 20 years of experience. And the other aspect also where we see that our curriculum, what we have in university, including the vocational training, is really missing this aspect. If you want to really have medium, small enterprises really who are very proactive, then you need really to work on that. It's not just about having the technical knowledge and think all of it in the same market. Let's have other niche markets. And now let me dive into one important aspect, climate finance, where we have ESCWA, we work exclusively in this aspect for two reasons. Number one, that always we say in the region, and this is reflected in the nationally determined contributions, that we just have less than 11% in overall envelope of where we were able to quantify in terms of climate finance needs. But the problem is that who are the countries who were able to quantify this climate finance need? We were not able to. And you see most of the national determined contributions, as we speak, the deadline is February for the second round. But most of the countries, they lack the capacity to really be able to quantify this climate finance needs. Number one. Number two is also about that where the kind of, let's say, of resources in terms of climate finance, most of it doesn't come as concessional. We have less than 5% coming from the region, but specifically it's most in terms of depth, and we are not attracting as much. It's not just about mitigation, adaptation is even worse, and even less in the LDCs, which is less than 6%, attracting investment in the climate change mitigation. The other aspect that I can see it in the graph is the share of renewable energy in the region. While most of the investment that are done are driven by large scale, and you will see it in the GCC, but also in countries in the MENA region, all of them, the Maghreb and the Mashriq. But more importantly, that we see more in the public investment, private sector investment. It's large scale. When it comes to small scale, it's really missed, and this is where you have the last mile. And as you can see here, we in the MENA region, we are just in the orders. It's really minimal in terms of investment and the finance that come into that. Although we say there's a lot of climate finance coming to that. Now let me just I gave certain indication because I know that we will have more discussion on that. But what's in terms of national visions, regulation, strategy, and policy landscape? Where we are, there's a lot of effort that was done, but they still fall short, and we still lack coordination and stakeholder engagement, real coordination. I'm not just saying having a meeting and coordinating a research. It's really about implementation. It's need trust, and it's need a long run too, and it's need men and women also, and it needs youth and all the population, and no one should be left behind. And that's why I spoke about sustainability. We had this issue when you implemented the region, the project that I presented. It was really key to put indicators and the money in there in order to ensure the sustainability of any initiative we do. And where we need to work, I'm sure you will address that. The study and the survey we conducted and the focus group, we come up that the key challenges for this energy transition from their perspective is the insufficient long-term planning. It's also government support and or policy, which is lacking in terms for specific or medium scale. It's the availability of finance, but also the enabling environment for sustainable startups, startups. There are a lot of startups, but how this is sustainable. And public awareness, and awareness you have from public awareness, from technical awareness, government, the educational opportunities, because we speak about the energy transition, but we don't have yet the capacity, even in writing project proposal, local finance, and ensuring that we are having a role in this energy transition. Other aspects related to the skills labor force, including the existing one and the less and others. But the gender dimension was part of the equation. But this is where, because women now, they know that if policy and support is not provided, they need to find a solution, and they fight to find a solution. And we see that in the field. But how this is sustainable, you need a lot of passions. And that's why, if I have to speak and give certain policy and financial instruments, I see it in a policy and regulatory environment, investment and finance, capacity and knowledge partnerships, and collaboration. From policy and regulatory frameworks, and basically, I just want to highlight that this is applicable on the national level, but also when it comes to the medium scale. And the medium scale enterprises have a role to play, provided they are taking in the overall, I would say, package and overall strategy that we put in there. So that's why this need to be important to be included in long-term planning strategies that is tailored at national level. We cannot have a solution that are applicable to Egypt. It's necessary working to Morocco, working on others. This most of the case is not the case, and specific countries in conflict and others, LDCs and others, specifically also when it comes to long-term planning and how you take the human capital. And that's why enforcement of regulatory framework, a lot of regulations, we have a mapping for all the policies and regulations when it comes to the energy transition in the Arab region. There's a serious issue in terms of enforcing regulation, specifically an example of the energy efficiency. And the other aspect is also to undertake the reforms. A lot of reforms were undertaken. Some of them, when it comes to the energy and water prices, were actually contributing to leave some people behind. And we see it in certain places. And how really to work where I use the revenues that I come up from the hydrogen renewable energy, how I can ensure that I basically understand and build on the business model of the oil and gas sector in order to build better business model, and business model where the revenue should go to the most left behind in a way that's given direct subsidies and not given to intermediaries and so on. And the other aspect is also the align the skill development policies with the needs for the sustainable energy sector. If you look at all the energy strategies in the Arab region, none of them, a few of them, I list Egypt, Jordan, and United Arab Emirates, just mentioning the capacity building and training and having initiatives within the 20, I would say, national visions, but also in terms of the national determined contributions. But most of them, they just mention capacity building like that. There is no strategy when you look at the education system from the primary school to the university, because you need to have a market and you need to prepare the startups and the companies for the future managers for that. And the other aspect also, how to ensure inclusive education. Inclusive education, I spoke about the gender, spoke about the youth, rural-urban divide and conflict, but also those in disability. Most of the time, we don't consider that the energy transition, specifically when it comes to the medium, small enterprises, this is there where you have the room to involve the people with disability at the outset, because they can bring innovation and they can help really to support a fair energy transition. Now, in terms of capacity development, actually, it's all about capacity development, because we need at all levels within our policy level, and that's why we have an issue in terms of unlocking finance and ensuring sustainability of the initiative, because at the policy level, policymakers, those in terms of the ministries and others authorities or implementations, they need really capacity building. It's not just about the energy transition. It's about how to make policies integrated that consider water, energy, food nexus, that how to embed the gender aspect, mainstreaming on all of that, how to be able to really write climate finance proposals that are bankable projects, and how to really mainstream the objectives of the NDC national determined contributions at the national level. And that's why we need really, there's another aspect also that I want to highlight when it comes to the system sustainability to the policy capacity building, is they promote equal access to skills attainment and support. It's not an entrepreneurship. It's not just also for those who are in the markets, now those in the oil and gas sector, they will remain for maybe 20 years if they are already in the labor force. And for this, you need really to maintain, and you need also to build their capacity and ensure through the enterprises to embed and have the KPIs to ensure that these enterprises are really put in programs that help to address the skills. The other aspect also that the vocational training, it's policy driven definitively, but we need to have, in order to have sustainable startups, then we need to have the skills and the human capital coming from the vocational training. And this is, we know that in the region, but there is not enough when it comes to the skills that we need for that. And the employment pathways, really the social contract, need revision, because today we don't have a social contract which is really inclusive. And specifically, and brain drain. We have it in the survey that we conducted. Most of the brain drain goods, they don't go to, they go to GCC, they go where we have more work opportunities. When we asked them, most of them, they want to stay in their countries. Why they should go to Europe and others? But the problem is the enabling environments, the access to education, when it comes to the energy transition, and finance when it comes to also having their own startups. And more importantly, it's a business model based on a knowledge and not a handout. What I mean that we need really to change the level and the way that in terms of education program, in a way that the entrepreneurships, we should not really be scared to have a lot of managers or to have those who are really too much technical. We need to have that. We need to have more entrepreneurs. In the way, actually, when I was in the oil and gas sector, I was not initially recruited by my manager because he said she cannot be maybe managed. She's more manager than a teamwork player. So, but it teach me a lot, this experience. And it's come to the investment of finance to finish with that. Innovation, as I indicated in the policy and capacity building, but also in finance. Specifically in the region, I spoke about policy first because of the enabler, capacity building, because we need to build a capacity. Now the strategy. When it comes to the strategy in the region, we should advocate more and use the climate agenda as an opportunity, and the NDCs as an opportunity to advocate for more climate finance coming to the region. But at the same time, we need to diversify the portfolio of the NGFAS. It's not just look into what I call it multi-stakeholder approach, multi-donor approach. Look at the different donors and you go and you sell your product and ensure that you don't rely just in one source. And specifically also when you speak about the energy transition and the finance for that, there are a lot of, I would say, that capacity building then we need to do within financial institutions, because starters, when they go to financial institutions, we had it in the project we implement, that renewable energy project is not about renewable energy project. Energy just an enabler. So one of the financial institutions is like really behind when it comes to their capacity and understanding of the energy transition. And obviously, a lot of financial instruments need to be embedded within our financial institutions. And more importantly, is also to build their capacity to leverage the blended finance and impact investing in renewable energy. Specifically, I spoke about grant, but this is combined nature. But I was speaking more about investing for sustainable energy solutions where you need to show KPIs. Among them, this KPIs is how to adapt to the ESG standards to attract more in terms of investment where you have more impact, because you would show the economic, the social, and the government aspect. And specifically, it's enhancing the accessibility and the inclusive through technology investment. Maybe in the results that we presented, we spoke about hydrogen and renewable energy. Specifically, actually, what we have in each market, it's not just about construction and doing small-scale renewable energy technology, decentralized system. It's about looking how to innovate, look at the technology that can help to address water, address agriculture, and others were energy enabler. Then for this, you need to look at technology, invest in technologies. It comes with the policy, but it comes also with the financial institutions that come with that. I want to finish with partnerships and collaboration, which is the last. how to really strengthen public partnerships through also and small, medium enterprises. This is, as I said, from engaging them at the policy design and implementation. Number two is also to engage in a social dialogue with the NGOs, but also the private sector. Is also to engage in the capacity building programs and ensure that the companies in the private sector is part of this to vehicle that. And I insist on education. And also to encourage enterprise-level cooperation when it comes to skills development, establishing formulas, dialogue, and collaboration specifically at the local level, because our last mile and local communities, when it comes to rural areas, it's the local context which is important, that collaboration within this context is important. And we cannot work in isolation, certainly at the national, regional level. Regional collaboration is important with the region. There are a lot of opportunity to learn and reverse knowledge from each other in the region. And I think business models, as reflecting this agenda, would show and help us to understand that and learn from best practices. And I would like to just to say that we need to reinforce this collaboration, but also take advantage and be part of the international agenda. Thank you very much.